James had never expected his night to turn out like this. A quiet evening walk under the stars was something he often did after a long day. He worked as a mechanic, fixing machines and vehicles in a small town. It wasn't a glamorous life, but it was his life. The town was peaceful, and the sky was clear, just perfect for stargazing. James loved looking up at the stars, thinking about the mysteries of the universe. Tonight, as he walked through the park, he felt a strange pull. A soft, almost musical sound reached his ears, and for a moment, he thought he heard whispers. Shaking his head, he figured it was just the wind or his imagination. But the sound grew louder, and before he could turn around, something strange happened. The ground beneath him rumbled. A blinding light appeared in the sky, so bright that he had to shield his eyes. It wasn't like anything he had seen before. There was no sound, just the sudden burst of light. His heart raced as he looked up, trying to make sense of what was happening. Then, without warning, the light pulled him into the air. He gasped, reaching out. But nothing he did could stop it. He felt his body being lifted, higher and higher, until he was completely off the ground. Panic filled his chest. The world below him grew smaller, and he felt as if he was drifting into another reality. In seconds, everything went dark. When he opened his eyes, he found himself in a place he didn't recognize. The air was cooler here, and there were no stars, only strange, glowing light surrounded him, and he was standing on what looked like metal flooring. He tried to move, but his body felt heavy, like he was trapped in some kind of invisible grip. His legs wouldn't obey his commands. "Where am I?" he whispered to himself, his voice shaking. Suddenly, a soft, melodic voice spoke. "You are not in your world anymore." James turned quickly, his heart pounding in his chest. The voice was calm, almost comforting, but it was not from anyone he had ever known. Standing in front of him was a woman, but not like any woman he had seen before. She was tall, with skin that seemed to shimmer in the dim light, her eyes glowing softly. Her hair flowed around her shoulders like liquid silver. For a moment, James stood frozen, staring at her, his breath caught in his throat. She was beautiful and real, almost. Her eyes were not human, but they were warm, full of something he couldn't describe. Despite the fear and confusion rising inside him, he couldn't look away. "You are safe," the woman said, her voice gentle but firm. "I am not your enemy." James opened his mouth, but no words came out. He was too stunned to speak. How could she say that? She had just taken him from Earth, from everything he knew. He wanted to shout, to demand answers, but his throat was dry, and his mind was racing. "Who are you?" he finally managed to say, his voice hoarse. The woman smiled slightly. "I'm Alara, and you are my guest for the time being." "Guest?" James repeated, his confusion growing. "What does that mean? Where am I? How did I get here?" Alara stepped closer, her presence calming him somehow, though his mind was still a whirl of questions. "You were taken from your planet, Earth, by my people. We have seen your world for many cycles, but now you are here with me." James' heart skipped a beat. "Taken? Why? What do you want with me?" Alara's smile faded, and her eyes became more serious. "You have been chosen for a purpose, but I do not yet know what it is." James tried to process her words. Chosen for a purpose? What kind of purpose could an alien race have for someone like him? He wasn't important, just a simple guy from Earth, far from anything special. He looked around the strange room, trying to make sense of it. It didn't look like any spaceship he had seen in movies. The walls were smooth and metallic, glowing. With soft light, everything was perfectly clean, without a single dust particle. There were no windows, no visible doors, and no signs of technology that made any sense to him. He felt like he had fallen into another world entirely. "Where are we? Where is this place?" he asked, his voice trembling. "This is my ship," Alara replied. "You are now aboard the Star Dancer. We are traveling far from your home." "How far?" James asked, but the words felt useless as soon as they left his mouth. He couldn't even grasp what was happening, let alone understand the distance between Earth and wherever he was now. "Far enough," Alara said, "but for now, you need rest. There will be time for questions later." James opened his mouth to argue, but exhaustion hit him hard. His body was drained, and his head was spinning. Everything felt unreal, like he was dreaming. How could this be happening? The last thing he remembered was looking at the stars, and now he was aboard an alien ship, face to face with a woman from another world. He didn't know why, but he felt drawn to her in a way he couldn't explain. She was strange, mysterious, and beautiful. Something about her made him feel both safe and terrified at the same time. He didn't know what would happen next, but a part of him wondered if maybe, just maybe, this wasn't as bad as he thought. Alara's voice broke his thoughts. Sleep now. We have much to discuss. James didn't argue. As the darkness of sleep took over, he couldn't help but wonder if he would ever see Earth again, or if he even wanted to. When James woke up, he wasn't sure where he was. His head was heavy, and his body felt strange, as though he had been asleep for far too long. The soft glow around him made everything look otherworldly, but it was the same room from before, only now the alien woman, Alara, was nowhere to be seen. He sat up slowly, trying to get his bearings. The floor beneath him was smooth and cool, and the walls shimmered with a soft, metallic light. It was quiet, except for a gentle hum, like the sound of a machine working in the background. As he stood up, a door slid open silently, revealing Alara standing in the doorway. She had changed into a different outfit, something that seemed to be made of thin, glowing material. Her eyes were still as striking as before, but now there was something more to her expression, something that suggested both power and grace. "Good morning," she said softly, her voice like a melody. "I trust you slept well." James rubbed his eyes, trying to shake off the confusion. I don't know where I am or why I'm here." Alara smiled slightly, but there was no hint of mockery in her expression. "You are aboard the Star Dancer, my ship. We are traveling far from your planet." "I know that part," James muttered. "But why did you bring me here? What do you want with me?" Her gaze softened. "You have many questions. I will answer them in time. But for now, you must learn about my world. There are rules here, and you must understand them if you are to stay." James frowned, trying to push past his fear. "Rules? What kind of rules?" "Rules of my people," Alara explained. "We are not like humans. Our ways are different. But we do not hurt others, not without reason." She turned, gesturing for him to follow her. James hesitated, but then decided there was little choice but to go along. He didn't know what else to do, and it seemed like Alara was willing to help him understand, even if only a little. They walked down a long hallway, the soft glow of the walls lighting their way. The space around them felt vast, and James couldn't help but be amazed at the technology that surrounded him. The ship was unlike anything he had ever seen, a perfect blend of advanced technology and beauty. The walls weren't just smooth metal, but something that shimmered and changed color, almost like living material. They came to a large room, a kind of gathering place. It was open and airy, with tall ceilings and more of that soft, glowing light. In the center of the room was a large, round table, with seats made from a material that looked both soft and strong. "Sit," Alara instructed, motioning to one of the chairs. James sat, still feeling like he was in a dream. Alara took the seat across from him and folded her hands in front of her. "Let me explain," she said. "I did not bring you here out of malice. Our people have been watching your planet for many cycles. We know about Earth, its people, its wars, and its history. But what we did not expect was how different you are." James blinked. "Different? How do you mean? You are unpredictable," she said with a smile that made him feel both uneasy and fascinated. "Your species is capable of both great destruction and great kindness. We have never encountered anything like it in the galaxy." He didn't know what to say to that. The idea that they had been watching Earth was both creepy and flattering, but he didn't feel like the kind of person who would be chosen by aliens. He was just a regular guy. "You keep saying that I was chosen. Chosen for what?" James asked. Leaning forward slightly, Alara's expression grew more serious. "That is what we are still trying to understand. We believe there is something in you, something in humans, that could change the future of this galaxy. But we are not sure what it is yet. That is why you are here, to learn, to grow, and perhaps to help us understand. James stared at her, trying to make sense of her words. So, you brought me here because you think I can help you? With what? I don't even know what you do here. Alara smiled again, her eyes glimmering. We are a peaceful people. Our goal is to protect the universe from harm, to prevent war and suffering wherever we find it. But we are not as strong as we once were. We need help, and we think you might be the key. James felt a mix of emotions. There was a part of him that felt honored to be the center of attention in this strange alien world. But another part of him wanted to scream, to run back to Earth, to escape from this place that felt so unfamiliar, so out of his control. You keep saying that I'm special, but I don't feel special, he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. I'm just a guy. I don't have any powers. I can barely even fix things on Earth without screwing it up. You underestimate yourself, Alara said softly. The power you have is not in what you can see, but in what you can feel. It's in your compassion, your ability to adapt, to change. We have much to learn from you, James. He looked down at his hands, wondering if this was really happening. So, what happens now? What do I do? Alara stood up, offering him her hand. Now, you learn, and you decide if you want to help us. You are free to choose. James hesitated, then took her hand. There was no going back now. Whether he liked it or not, he was part of something much bigger than himself. And somehow, despite the fear and confusion, he felt a strange pull toward her, toward this world, and toward whatever future awaited him here. The days aboard the Star Dancer began to blend together in a strange haze. James spent most of his time with Alara, learning about her people and their way of life. It was a world of peace and beauty, where the people focused on harmony with the universe. There was no violence, no hatred, just balance. Alara would show him the wonders of her ship, explaining its technology, its power, and its purpose. But James couldn't help but feel out of place. He was still human, after all. He still craved the dirt and grime of his home, the simple things he had once taken for granted. Yet, with each passing day, he found himself drawn more and more to Alara. She was beautiful in ways he couldn't describe, not just in appearance, but in everything she did. The way she moved, the way she spoke, the way she seemed to understand him without words. It all felt like magic. One evening, they sat together in one of the ship's observation decks. Outside the massive windows, the stars seemed to stretch on forever. James leaned back in his chair, trying to take in the view, but his mind was focused on Alara. How can you be so calm? He asked. I don't understand how you live like this. There's no danger, no excitement. Everything is so perfect. Alara smiled softly. Not everything is perfect, James. Perfection is a concept. What we aim for is balance. Life is not about seeking excitement or danger. It's about understanding our place in the universe and accepting it. James nodded but still felt restless. But what about love? Is there room for love in this perfect world? At this, Alara's smile faded. She seemed to hesitate before answering, her gaze turning towards the stars outside the window. Love is complicated, she said quietly. It is not something that can be easily controlled. It is a force that can bring great joy, but also great pain. In my world, love between different species is not accepted. James' heart sank. He had known this from the start, but hearing her say it out loud made it feel so much more real. She wasn't just a beautiful alien, she was someone who had rules to follow. A society that wouldn't allow her to love a human. And yet, something between them was undeniable. I don't care about the rules, James said suddenly, his voice more forceful than he intended. I care about you, Alara. Alara turned to face him, her eyes wide, as if she hadn't expected him to say that. Her face softened, but there was a sadness in her gaze that made James' heart ache. James, you must understand, she began, her voice gentle but firm. There are things you do not know, things about my people, my duties, my place in this galaxy. If I were to allow myself to feel something for you, it could destroy everything. It could destroy you." James reached across the table, his hand trembling as he placed it over hers. "I don't care about all that. I don't care about the consequences. All I know is that when I'm with you, I feel alive in a way I never have before, and I don't want to lose that." Alara pulled her hand away gently, looking at him with a mixture of regret and affection. "I cannot allow myself to give in to these feelings," she said. "It's not just about my people's rules. It's about what it means for both of us. We would be torn apart, James. You would never be able to return to your world, and I would be torn between you and everything I know." "But what if that doesn't matter?" James whispered. "What if we can make it work? What if we can find a way to be together, no matter what anyone else thinks?" Alara looked at him for a long moment, and James could see the conflict in her eyes. She wanted to say yes. He could see it in the way her lips parted, in the way her hands twitched as if she were about to reach for him. But she didn't. "James, I can't," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I care about you too much. That's why I can't let this happen. I've seen what happens when emotions cloud judgment, and I refuse to let that happen to us." James felt his chest tighten with disappointment, but he didn't argue. He understood. He understood more than he wanted to admit. They came from different worlds, from different lives. What they felt was powerful, but it was also dangerous. They couldn't simply wish away the universe's rules. Alara stood up, and James followed her. She placed her hand on his shoulder, her touch both comforting and heartbreaking at once. "I'm sorry, James," she said softly, "but you need to understand this is not the kind of love that can survive in a place like this. You are human, and I am something else. Our love could tear us both apart in ways you cannot imagine." James nodded, feeling as if his heart had been torn in two. He didn't want to accept it, but he had no choice. He had never felt this kind of connection before, but perhaps it wasn't meant to be. Maybe some things were too impossible to make real. "Then what do we do now?" he asked, his voice thick with emotion. Alara gave him a sad smile. "We do what we must. I will teach you what you need to know, and you will go back to your world. Perhaps one day we will meet again. But for now, we must part ways." James watched as she turned to leave, the weight of her words sinking in. His heart longed for her, but he knew she was right. There were forces at play that neither of them could change. He was human, and she was something far beyond him. But even if they couldn't be together, he couldn't forget her, not ever. The days after their conversation were harder than James could have imagined. Alara was distant, her usual warmth now replaced with cold professionalism. She still took him on tours of her ship, showing him new wonders. But there was always a quiet sadness behind her eyes. She seemed to be pushing him away, and it broke his heart a little more every time. James couldn't stop thinking about her. He couldn't stop thinking about the way she had held him, even for a moment. The way her voice softened when she said his name. But the reality of their situation was becoming clearer. She was right. They came from different worlds, different lives. There was no future for them. Not here. Not with her people watching. But even though he understood the reasons, his heart still refused to let go. He didn't want to return to Earth, back to his normal life, knowing he had left something so rare and beautiful behind. He had to try something, anything to stay close to her. One evening, when the ship was quiet and most of the crew were resting, James found himself standing by the observation window, staring out at the stars. The feeling of helplessness weighed on him. He couldn't stay here forever. If he didn't do something soon, he might be sent back to Earth where he would forget everything about this place. This alien beauty who had taken him from his world. A thought struck him. He didn't need to leave the ship. He didn't need to give up on Alara just yet. Maybe, just maybe, he could escape not from the ship, but from the expectations that her people had for him. Maybe if he showed them that he didn't belong in their world, they would leave him to live with Alara. And Peace thought it wasn't a perfect plan. It wasn't even a good one. But James didn't have many options left. He moved quietly through the ship, following the layout that Alara had shown him. He had memorized it by now. and he knew that there was a restricted area in the lower levels of the Star Dancer. It was where the ship's most important systems were kept, far from the public eye. He'd heard Alara mention it once, and he knew that the crew spent little time there. It seemed like the perfect place to try something bold. As he crept through the ship's corridors, he thought back to his time on Earth, to the life he had left behind. He had never been one for big risks. He liked to fix things, make them better, but never destroy them. But this was different. This was something he needed to do, not just for himself, but for Alara. He reached the restricted section without being noticed. The doors to the control room were sleek, almost invisible in the low light of the ship. He pressed his hand against the panel, and to his surprise, it slid open. His heart raced. This wasn't supposed to be this easy. He stepped inside quickly, keeping his steps as quiet as possible. Inside, the room was filled with alien technology, smooth panels, glowing screens, and strange buttons he didn't recognize. It looked like something out of a science fiction movie. James felt a surge of adrenaline as he walked up to one of the control panels, trying to make sense of it. The ship's systems were complicated, but he wasn't stupid. He had been a mechanic. On Earth, he could figure this out. His fingers hovered over the buttons. He had no idea what they did, but he knew one thing for sure. He had to make the ship malfunction. If he could create enough confusion, maybe he could force the crew to give him some time with Alara. Maybe he could why them both a chance at a life together. Just as he was about to press one of the glowing buttons, a sudden sound froze him in his tracks. The door behind him opened, and he whipped around to find Alara standing there, her expression unreadable. "What are you doing?" Her voice was calm, but there was a hard edge to it. James' heart skipped a beat. He hadn't expected her to find him here. I thought I could help. I thought maybe I could. You think this is helping?" Alara cut him off, her eyes narrowing. "You don't understand. This is not the way." James swallowed hard. "I had to try. I don't want to leave, Alara. I can't go back to Earth knowing this is all I'll ever have with you." Alara stepped forward, her face softening for a moment. She placed a hand on his arm. "James, you don't understand. What you are doing could destroy everything, not just for you, but for me, too. If the crew finds out about this, they will not just send you back to Earth. They will imprison us both." He pulled away from her gently, frustration bubbling up inside him. "I don't care what they do. I care about you, Alara. I want to be with you." "Then you must listen," she said, her voice almost pleading. "You must understand the danger. I care for you, too. But if we do this, there is no turning back. I will lose everything. And so will you?" James felt the weight of her words, and for a moment, he wanted to give in. He wanted to leave it all behind, to forget the plan and just be with her. But deep down, he knew she was right. There was no easy way out of this. "I don't want to lose you," James said quietly, the words leaving his mouth before he could stop them. "But I can't go back to a life without you. I need you to understand that." Alara's eyes softened, but there was still a sadness there. She looked at him for a long time, then sighed deeply. "I understand more than you know," she whispered, "but there is no easy way to make this right. There is no way for us to be together without losing everything we have." For the first time, James saw the depth of her struggle, the weight of the choices she had to make. And in that moment, he knew that neither of them could escape the consequences of their love. But he also knew that he would never stop fighting for her, no matter how impossible it seemed. The days after the incident in the control room were tense. James tried to keep his distance from Alara, though every time he saw her, his heart felt like it was being pulled into directions. He knew she was right. He couldn't just act on impulse. The consequences of his actions could destroy everything they had, everything they could ever have. But the thought of losing her, of returning to Earth and never seeing her again, seemed unbearable. Every moment without her felt like a lifetime. Alara, too, was distant, but James could tell that the same turmoil churned inside her. She was struggling. He saw it in the way she avoided his gaze, and the way her voice faltered when she spoke to him. It was as though she, too, was caught between duty and desire, torn between her people and the man she had come to care for. One evening, Alara invited him to join her for a walk along the outer edge of the ship. The stars outside shone brightly, casting their light over the vast expanse of space. James could see the entire galaxy stretching out before him, so beautiful and endless. It made him feel small, insignificant, but also strangely alive. They walked side by side, the silence between them comfortable but filled with unspoken words. James longed to say something, to tell her how he felt, but he couldn't bring himself to break the silence. Not yet. Finally, Alara spoke. "James, there's something I need to tell you." He turned to look at her, his heart racing. "What is it?" She stopped walking and turned to face him. "I've been thinking about everything, the choice you want me to make. I've thought about the consequences, about what it would mean for both of us." James swallowed hard, waiting for her to continue. "I cannot promise you that we will be together," she said, her voice steady but tinged with sadness. "But I can promise you this. If you choose to stay here with me, if you choose to defy everything my people stand for, I will stand by you. I will do everything I can to protect you. But there will be a price. We will both lose something." Her words hung in the air like a heavy weight. James didn't know what to say. He had known it wouldn't be easy, but hearing her say it aloud made it so real, so final. "What will we lose?" he asked quietly, afraid of the answer. "Everything. We know," Alara replied. "Our worlds, our places in this galaxy, everything we've worked for. If I defy my people, they will see it as betrayal. They will see you as a threat, and they will stop at nothing to remove us from their world. I will lose my position, my status, and you will lose your chance to return home. You will never be able to go back to Earth." James felt a coldness wash over him. He had always known that staying with her would mean giving up everything: his life, his future, his home. But hearing it from Alara, seeing the pain in her eyes, made it all feel so much more real. "And if we don't do this?" James asked, his voice trembling. "What happens then? Do we just live apart? Do I go back to Earth, and you go back to your people?" Alara looked down, her expression hard to read. "Yes," she said softly. "If we don't act, you will go back to your planet, and I will return to my world. Our lives will go back to the way they were before you arrived. You will live your life, and I will live mine, and we will both pretend that nothing ever happened." The thought of never seeing her again, of returning to a life without her, was unbearable. James didn't know what to do. He wanted to stay, wanted to fight for her, but was he willing to sacrifice everything for a love that could never truly be? "Alara," he said, his voice low but steady, "I can't go back. I can't just forget everything we've shared. I know it's dangerous, and I know there's no easy way out, but I can't let you go. I'm not asking you to break every rule. I'm asking you to choose me, to choose us." Alara's eyes softened, but there was still a wariness in her gaze. "James, you don't understand. If I choose you, I choose a life of exile. I choose to be hunted by my own people. You don't know what that would mean for me, for us." "I don't care," James said, stepping closer to her. "I don't care about the risks. I only care about you. I'm ready to face whatever comes with you by my side. I don't want to live a life without you in it." There was a long silence between them as Alara searched his face, her expression unreadable. James held his breath, waiting for her to make the choice. He didn't know what the future held, but he knew one thing. He couldn't live in a world where Alara wasn't there with him. Finally, Alara spoke, her voice quiet but resolute. "Then we make our choice together," she said. "If we are to be together, we must do it now. There's no turning back." James felt a rush of emotion flood through him. He had made his choice, and now it was her turn. "I'm ready," he said, his voice steady. "Whatever it takes." Alara looked at him one last time, and for the first time in days, she smiled a real smile, full of warmth and love. "Then we will face it together, James. Whatever comes next, we will face it as one." As they stood there, beneath the stars, their future uncertain but their hearts bound together, James knew one thing for sure. He had made the right choice, no matter what came next. He would never regret choosing Alara. The decision had been made. James and Alara had chosen each other, despite the risks, despite the consequences. There was no going back now. As the days passed, they prepared for what lay ahead. Alara worked with James, teaching him more about the Star Dancer and the technology that powered the ship. They knew they needed to be ready if they were going to face the consequences of defying her people. They had to be strong. The tension between them had faded, replaced with a sense of determination. For the first time since he had arrived, James felt a sense of purpose. He wasn't just a human lost in space anymore. He was fighting for a future, for a life with Alara. But even as they worked, they both knew something that made their hearts heavy. The crew of the Star Dancer would never accept their relationship. They were bound by their loyalty to the ship, to the mission. The idea of an alien and a human together, of Alara, a high-ranking member of her people. Choosing a human over her people was unthinkable to them. One evening, as they sat together in the ship's lounge, a sudden alarm blared throughout the ship, followed by a voice over the intercom. "Attention. All personnel report to the main deck immediately. We have an unexpected situation." Alara's face went pale. "This isn't good," she said, standing quickly. "I need to go." "Stay here, James." Before he could protest, she was gone. James remained seated, his mind racing. He knew something was happening, something big. He didn't want to be left behind, but he understood why Alara had to go. If the crew found out about them, if they knew they had decided to go against the rules, everything they had worked for would be lost. He stood up and moved toward the door, deciding he couldn't stay there waiting. He needed to be with her. He needed to stand by her side, no matter what. As he stepped into the hallway, he saw Alara speaking with a group of officers, members of her people. They were all gathered around, talking in hushed voices. Alara looked serious, her face tight with worry. James stepped forward, but before he could get any closer, he heard a voice behind him. "James." He turned to see a familiar face, Kiro, one of the engineers who worked aboard the ship. Kiro was one of the few crew members who had been kind to him during his time on the Star Dancer. He had never really spoken to James about anything personal, but now there was a strange look in his eyes. "You should go back to your room," Kiro said quietly. "It's not safe for you to be here." James frowned. "What's going on? What's happening?" Kiro hesitated before speaking again. "The crew. They've been suspicious of you. They've been watching. And now that they know about you and Alara, things are going to get bad. If they find out that you two are involved, it won't just be the ship's mission at risk. It's much bigger than that." James' stomach twisted. "What are you talking about? What will happen?" Kiro looked over his shoulder, making sure no one else was listening. "If the crew finds out, they'll call for reinforcements. They'll bring in the council of higher-ups from Alara's people. And once they get involved, you won't have any choice. They won't let you live. Neither of you will." James felt a chill run down his spine. "But Alara, she won't be able to stop it," Kiro interrupted, his voice low and urgent. "I'm not supposed to tell you this, but I want to help. I don't agree with what they're doing, what they're planning, but I can't just sit by and do nothing." James stared at Kiro, unsure whether to trust him. This could be a trap. But there was something in Kiro's eyes of sincerity that made James feel like he wasn't lying. "Why are you helping me?" James asked. Kiro glanced around again before answering. "Because I've seen what Alara is willing to sacrifice. She's not just some leader or officer. She's more than that. She's someone who cares about people. And I think maybe you're the key to saving her." James swallowed, his thoughts spinning. "What do I need to do?" Kiro stepped closer, his voice almost a whisper. "You have to leave the ship, now, while there's still time. There's a small escape pod only for emergencies. It's hidden in one of the lower bays. If you can get to it, you might be able to escape before the crew acts. Alara, she won't be able to help you if they come for you. They'll use her position against her." James nodded. He knew what Kiro was saying was true. If he stayed, if he waited for Alara, they would both be caught, and whatever chance they had would be gone. "Thank you," James said, his voice full of gratitude. "But how do I know I can trust you?" Kiro gave him a small, almost sad smile. "You don't, but I don't have much time, and neither do you." With that, Kiro turned and disappeared into the shadows, leaving James standing there, alone and uncertain. His heart pounded in his chest. The decision had been made. He had to go. He had to leave. But a part of him hesitated. A part of him didn't want to leave without Alara. He couldn't just abandon her, not after everything they had been through. But Kiro was right. If he stayed, they would both be lost. James took a deep breath and turned toward the escape pod. The risk was enormous, but so was the reward. For a chance at a future with Alara, it was worth everything. James' heart was racing as he moved through the dimly lit corridors of the Star Dancer. The ship felt different now, darker, more tense. The walls, once comforting with their soft glow, now seemed cold and indifferent. He was alone, save for the soft hum of the ship's engines beneath his feet. Kiro's words echoed in his mind. Get to the escape pod. Now, he didn't look back. He couldn't. The decision had been made. There was no turning back. James had spent days trying to figure out how to stay with Alara. He had tried to understand the dangers, the risks, the consequences. But now, as he walked through the ship, everything seemed so clear. He couldn't live without her. He had to take the chance, even if it meant leaving behind everything he knew. He reached the lower levels of the ship, where the escape pods were kept. The doors to the bay were heavy, the metal cold beneath his hand as he pushed them open. Inside, the pods were lined up, waiting for emergencies. James could see one at the far end, its sleek design almost inviting. It was small, but it would do. It was his only hope now. He stepped inside, securing the hatch behind him. His heart was still pounding, but now there was a calmness settling over him. He had made the right choice. He was leaving. He was escaping. But even as he started to prepare the pod for launch, doubt crept into his mind. What about Alara? He couldn't leave her. He couldn't just escape without telling her. But what if it was too late? What if the crew had already discovered their secret? What if they were already planning to stop him? He felt the weight of the decision pressing down on him. For a moment, he almost turned around, ready to leave the pod and go back to Alara. But then he thought about the future, about what they could have if they were free. Alara had given him a choice, and he had chosen. He couldn't leave without a future, and he couldn't let her sacrifice everything for him. He had to take this step, even if it meant everything would change. Just as he was about to launch the pod, the intercom crackled. To life, all personnel, report to the main deck. Immediate action required. James froze, his breath catching in his throat. It was too soon. They couldn't have known. The crew couldn't have discovered him yet. But as he listened carefully, he heard something else. Alara's voice, clear and steady, cutting through the chaos. Everyone, calm down. I'm giving the orders here. Stay in your positions, James. Heart skipped a beat. Alara had taken charge. She was protecting him, as she had promised. But it wasn't enough. The crew wasn't going to listen to her forever. He had to act now. Without thinking, he set the pod's course for the nearest exit. The engines hummed to life, and the pod shot forward faster than he thought possible. The ship's sounds faded as the pod broke free from the Star Dancer's hold, and James found himself surrounded by the vast emptiness of space. He stared out the window, seeing nothing but the stars stretching in every direction. It was both beautiful and terrifying. He was leaving behind everything he knew, everything he thought was safe, for something unknown. But it wasn't just space he was escaping. It was the rules. It was the restrictions that had been placed on him and Alara. He had made his choice. This was his future now. And nothing, not even the vastness of space, could take that away. As the pod flew further into the darkness, James finally allowed himself to breathe. He had done it. He had chosen freedom. And with it, he knew he had chosen a chance at a future. With Alara, the thought of her made his heart ache. He couldn't wait to be with her again. He had made the right decision, but the longing in his chest wouldn't go away. After what felt like hours, the pod's systems beeped to life again. James looked at the control panel and saw a blinking light. He was approaching a nearby space station, one that was outside of the reach of Valera's people. It wasn't much, but it was a place to start, a place where they could rebuild. He activated the pod's communication system, hoping to reach out to Alara. There was a brief pause before the screen flickered to life, and there she was, Alara. Her face calm, but full of concern. "James," she said softly, "I thought you left without me." "I couldn't," he replied, his voice thick with emotion. "I couldn't leave you, Alara. We have to do this together." Alara's eyes softened. "Then, we will. I will find you, wherever you are, and we will face the future as one." James smiled, his heart finally at ease. Together. The connection cut off, but it didn't matter. He knew she was out there, fighting for him just as he was fighting for her. He took one last look at the stars, feeling the weight of the decision settling in. It wasn't going to be easy, but he was ready. He was ready to face whatever the future held, as long as he had Alara by his side.